This is the story of a squirrel who got risen when he drowned the whole world. While things look so dark and Noah's Ark was absolutely flooded, yet she's fine.
And Noah built an altar unto the Lord, and taking of all the cattle and fowls that were clean, offered holocausts upon the altar. And the Lord smelled the sweet savor, and said, I will no more curse the earth for the sake of man, for the imagination and thought of man's heart are prone to evil from his youth. What? Yeah, this is actually an old school Bible. It's an old Catholic Bible. People say we don't read them. You know, I dug out some just to prove I had them. I've read them. We were discussing Noah's Ark.
Yes.
And eating babies.
I don't want to eat babies.
Okay, no eating babies. We don't really do that. It's a joke.
Yeah. Apparently people think we're Satanists or something like that.
This is a Catholic version, or this is a Catholic Home Edition Bible. Now, for everybody that's not Catholic, Genesis 8:20 actually reads in the King James Version, and Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done.
Okay, where should we begin?
Well, you know, fairness to the beginning, just so everybody knows, that's actually a Dake's Bible. I have several. This is a King James. This is a Catholic one. I don't even remember what edition. That's a Quest Study Bible. It's an NIV. We were looking at an Amplified earlier.
Yeah, this thing that looks like a folder, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it's a Bible. You've read all of them, haven't you? Cover to cover.
Yes. It turned me atheist. It makes no sense in a lot of places. You know, we're actually just taking a story that's really hard to deal with a lot of times is from a Christian side. I always found it a little hard to deal with. I was very I was a fundamentalist at one time, and you know what? I always found it a little challenging because of several reasons. We're actually going to discuss a little bit about Noah's Ark here. So, you know, maybe you'll see what I saw, maybe not. Maybe you'll just think I'm a crackpot. Genesis 5, it stated that God finds no one has virtue. That's right, he hits the giant bullshit alert that says everybody is evil. So nobody had any virtue at all.
Yes.
This means God, who is all-knowing and the creator of everything, created men capable of not sustaining virtue.
Mm-hmm. As everything they did was bent towards evil.
And everything on the planet was bent towards evil, but somehow Noah was not on the planet because it's a pretty blanket statement. I mean, no, he was found not wanting like everybody else. So, you know, there is that too. I would like to point out Noah was on the planet.
Yeah.
The guy who built the ship the size of the Titanic out of wood was on the planet. I know. Mind blown.
In Genesis 6:4, there's a verse where it talks about giants or Nephilim, depending upon your translation. Where did these things come from in the creation?
Yeah, I don't know where the giants came from in creation either. Speculation, is there anything from angels too? Just something else God created, didn't tell anybody about?
Exactly. One of the problems with creation. But it's there. Within the story of Noah. And that's mainly the point I'm trying to bring up.
Yeah, they're not referenced very often in the Bible. Giants are there in the Bible. I mean, in all fairness, David slayed one later on. But giants here are referenced here as taking taking wives amongst normal women. Earlier, when we were going over this beforehand, when we were looking through all this stuff, discussing Noah's Ark, we were discussing the 5 stages of grief as well. We went off on a few tangents, but, just for quick reference, here's the 5 stages of grief. 1, denial and isolation. 2, anger. 3, bargaining. 4, depression. 5, acceptance. God seems to go through all of these himself, which is really an interesting thought here. He's capable of showing all emotion. I'm not sure why he needs to. He should have foresaw we were going to screw up, but apparently not only did he not foresee it, he had to then go through the 5 stages of grief. So, in Genesis chapter 6, verse 3, we get to his isolation. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. So right there, they're kind of limiting, God was already cutting off contact with man. So that's isolation.
And also somehow Noah's able to live longer than 120 years.
A lot of people lived longer than 120 years.
Apparently back then.
And Genesis 6:7, anger. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing and the fowls of the air, for repenteth me that I have made them. It's pretty interesting. He seems pretty angry there as well. He's really angry he made us. Not only should he have known how we were going to turn out, he then made us anyway, and then this happens, and then he becomes angry over it. He sounds like a 2-year-old with a Lego castle.
And he's quite regretful for it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's alien to him that this could happen.
Oh my God. People are evil.
Genesis 8:21. Bargaining and depression actually both come in this. Genesis 8:20-21. And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast, and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing, as I have done. While the earth remained as seed time and harvest time, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. So, we have bargaining. He's not going to do this anymore. We also have depression because it took, I'm going to use the term Holocaust from the first reading, to pretty much get his attention to go, hey, we're still here. This is actually backed up later on when instead of talking to God, Noah sends birds out of the ark.
Yeah. Why does he need to send birds out of the ark when God was the one who closed the ark? It actually says God closed the ark, sealed the ark.
Yep. Now, further in Genesis 8:22, which is something else I read, that's where we get acceptance. He's accepted this has happened because mighty him needs to accept this. He caused it, but he finally accepted it. So, we see God go through these stages of grief. Grief he pretty much caused himself because he creates everything perfectly. He is perfect. He can't see the future, though, even though he should know everything. And, has
that's
to
that's lack of omniscience.
Yeah, he's supposedly omniscient, but he's also just demonstrated it's not. I find it fascinating.
Especially since it surprises him that man turned out to be evil.
God flooded the world. How many cubits did he flood the world? 15 cubits deep above the highest mountain. Mount Everest's highest point is 29,029 feet above sea level. This means if a cubit is 3 feet, which was my original estimate, God flooded Water over the planet, 29,074 feet. Now, if we take a cubit as half of that 3 foot, so 1.5 feet, which is also suspected to be a cubit. I've heard several measurements for a cubit, but I'm going to give you two general ones. One's kind of crazy out there, and the other one's pretty normal. 29,051.5 feet. That's how much water would have been added to the surface of the planet.
And where did all that water go?
Well, first, where did all the water come from?
That's true, too. Where did all the water come from?
Here's the thing. With that water, and keep in mind, God flooded the whole planet to drown every living substance. Not everything that breathes, every living substance. So, if this water erupted from the ground, well, it would have been superheated by the Earth's surface, and that would have cooked the fish. It gets better if it came down from the sky. It would have just diluted the ocean water and killed the fish. Not to mention pressure differences. The Bible actually says both, and both would have screwed up good. Everybody knows the dove flies out and eventually returns with a fig, because God and Noah aren't talking at this time. I don't know what happened.
Olive branch.
Oh, yeah, olive. Okay, olive. It is olive. I know it's olive. I even read it earlier. But the dove comes back with an olive branch. Every living substance was destroyed. Did God do more creating to cause this branch to come back? Because how did it get there?
Yeah, it says that he destroyed everything.
In Genesis 8:11 it says it. So is that not all plants dead? You know, are plants not a living substance?
And when the fish came, where did the fish... I mean, the fish would have been killed if the flood actually happened.
So where did the fish come from?
Yeah. I mean, not only would superheating the water destroy them, but if you mix fresh water and salt water, you're going to kill them anyway.
Yes. There are a few species of fish that defy this and do live that. There are plenty that don't. So, and it would have killed the freshwater fish then too, because it would have become too salty for them. If you don't believe me, yes, there are some fish. Please look it up. You know,
it just creates a lot of problems, because that's not how life works. You don't just suddenly able to survive freshwater or saltwater, depending upon what kind of fish you are, just because a flood happens.
So, you know, did God decide suddenly that he was going to save the fish too? But then they're a living substance, so did the Bible lie there?
Yes.
Or maybe fish aren't alive.
Maybe.
Maybe we all eat dead shit.
Yes.
In the vein of eating things, though, I believe you found something on that?
Apparently in the Bible, not long after the flood happens, God says that you are to eat of everything is meat.
Okay, if you are to eat of everything and everything is meat, correct me if I'm wrong, a pig is meat then, right?
Right.
Okay. So if pigs are meat, why are they banned by several religions?
Yes.
Or for that matter, why do certain other religions ban cows? You can't eat cows in India. They're a sacred animal.
But it's directly states every creature is to be eaten as meat, and you're supposed to make them fear you. So apparently we're supposed to make animals afraid of us, and we're supposed to eat them all.
Yes. Of course, I will answer my later question. Somebody came along in the later law books and said you couldn't eat this animal if, and this animal if, which directly contradicts the word, one of the words God gives here. That's a word from God. You are to eat all of them and make them fear you.
Oh, and previously it states that he's supposed to bring aboard 7 of each kind of clean animal. So apparently there's clean and unclean meat just before the flood, but apparently everything is able to be eaten after the flood. And then somewhere between there, the unclean meat became unclean again.
Yeah, I know. It hurts my head too. Now, something that's always been on my mind, the actual dimensions of the Ark. Now, I've seen a lot of Arks. Some of them look submersible. I'm not sure why. The Ark was bared up by the floodwaters, so I don't know why they look submersible, but there are a few renditions I've seen that do. More popularly, I'm going to go with this. Why did the Ark only have one window? Clearly in the building plans, there was one window.
And it says it's at the top of the Ark. So, was it some kind of skylight?
Well, having the window at the top of the Ark would at least help provide some ventilation. I'll give them that.
Right.
Gases tend to, have this rise effect with heat and such. It might help with air circulation. I don't know. And to my knowledge, gopher wood still hasn't been answered.
Yeah. Maybe gopher wood was destroyed by the...
Yeah, did God destroy this magical holy wood that he said that somehow built a ship the size of the Titanic?
Yes, it says that he destroyed everything under the flood, so that would mean gopher wood is extinct.
Yes, that is correct. If everything under the flood was destroyed, gopher wood is extinct. But he recreated most of it like olives.
Yes, he created olives right after the flood.
Okay, here's a point I'm going to make. To tell you how big the Ark is. If a cubit is 1.5 feet, which is considered a reasonable measurement for a cubit, might be a little longer, might be a little shorter. The Ark was to be 300 cubits long. That's 450 feet with basic math. It was to be 30 cubits high, which is 45 feet high. Then it was to be 50 cubits wide, which is 75 feet. Of this, it was supposed to have 3 stories, so that's 15 foot a story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you here.
Okay. Okay, so now you followed along with the height, width, and length, so we can get general amount of floor space. Okay, for each level of this, assuming they're all the same identical level, and there's no proof they were, a lot of ships have levels that are various sizes, even the barges that this Ark is going to turn out to be if you follow these build plans. But I'm going to assume they're all the same size. That gives you 33,750 foot square feet per deck. Mm-hmm. It's not a small ship. It's 101,250 feet for the whole thing floor space. Mm-hmm. So Noah's got himself a nice mansion he's going to fill with, well, we'll use the base of 2 of every animal, which is really 2 of every animal and 7 of every clean. Please read all of Genesis. Okay. Now,
people keep forgetting about the 7 of clean kind. I think it was 2 of every kind. No. It says 7 of all the clean kind.
Okay. So now we know how the dinosaurs got left off the Ark. There just wasn't enough room.
And they were unclean.
They must have been unclean.
Really, really unclean.
Maybe they tried to bathe them and they just drowned. I don't know. Perhaps it's really hard to hold a T-Rex by the neck and dip it in the water because it's so unclean. I've never tried. Teaching the controversy here. The dinosaurs existed. Reasonably, they are still a kind of animal, and they don't show up after even what you would consider the flood layer. There are lizards and everything else that show up, but you know what? Not the dinosaurs. Nothing that big shows up. And really, they should have had some time to grow still, so we should still be seeing some huge, ginormous lizards, and we don't. So there was a lot of space on the Ark, but then you start adding in things like elephants, and you know what? Even the spiders are going to need a place, so are the rodents, so are the rats, the squirrels, marsupials from Australia.
From what I've heard, one of the conservative estimates of how many species there are, or what some people might call kinds, the conservative estimate, 3,000.
Yeah, 3,000 in 101,250 square foot of space. It's not a lot.
What, do they have is the Ark a TARDIS or something?
We could probably turn it into cube feet and argue it had more decks. I don't know. Maybe Noah didn't follow the build plan perfectly.
Or maybe we just don't know what a cubit is. Maybe the Ark was much, much larger than people thought.
Continent Australia?
Yeah.
The island of New Zealand. It's pretty square. Maybe the island of New Zealand floated.
Maybe.
Otherwise, there was a passage in there about one of Noah's sons.
Oh, yeah. Apparently, God blesses his sons. It says, and he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem and Chanaan, his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and may he dwell to the tents of Shem, Chanaan.
Now I'm going to turn into a fourth grader here. God enlarging Japheth. Either Japheth needed to be much better endowed, the shrink ray failed to bring him back to normal size, or perhaps what God really meant was, make him a country. I don't know. But, the shrink ray does fit with the Ark problem. So,
it might work. I mean, maybe they just, shrink them and put them in, these drawer-like pens or something like that.
Yeah, that would work. Think of how many things you could fit in there then.
Yeah, it would free up so much space. But the Bible doesn't even state that that's what happened.
No, and there was one window in the Ark too.
Yes, one window.
Just one. I want to clarify, one window. It's in the blueprints.
There were rooms, but just one window.
God did shut them in the Ark too, though. So.
Yeah. But then Noah had to go and use animals to find out.
Yes, so God shut them in the Ark. This was all a great plan. Then he quit talking to everybody. We went through the 5 stages of grief. Obviously, God definitely falls into them. Over and over and over again, you can see where God is angry and bargaining, and it's readable if you read in between the lines. If I was doing half of what God did in this, everybody would come to me and they'd go, "Hey, Brandon, you're depressed." I might even actually get involuntarily committed.
Mm-hmm. And then at the end, they talk about how you should not shed the blood of other men, otherwise you get your blood shed. You're supposed to get be shed of blood if you shed the blood of another, because we're created in the image of God.
Well, here's some other fun stuff. Just this quick fun fact. God flooded the earth in 40 days by breaking open the wells of the deep and the windows of the sky, or whatever poetic language they decided. 40 days. A little over a month. Month and a third, actually. We'll go with a month and a third. God flooded the earth. It took him damn near a year to undo that.
Yes, it took him a year. So they were stuffed on that boat for a year.
It boggles my mind why we believe stuff like this. I do know why we do it. Part of it's just we're indoctrinated into this. But even I was indoctrinated into it. I stopped. I started asking questions, and that doesn't go so well normally.
It seems that when you ask questions about the Bible, people are like, "You're not supposed to do that."
Well, and I want to know this. It's the perfect Word of God, yet we find contradictions like that. Why do we find contradictions like this in Noah's Ark? And this is within the same story. It's not like I'm turning from Genesis to Matthew to find a contradiction, where, some time had progressed or something, and you can honestly say some things are different, this happened. No. I'm finding within the same story. And you can say perfect originals might have existed at one time. You know what? I would like to see those. You keep hiding, it keeps getting hidden behind this. I would say the original Bible might have been perfect, except it no longer exists, and if it was perfect, why was it destroyed?
Yeah.
We pick and choose. We chose Noah's Ark this time. Because man had no virtue in the beginning, apparently.
Yes. Man had no virtue. And apparently man is supposed to live only to 120, and Noah lived to 151 if you go by the story.
Oh, Noah lived to 100 and how old if you go by the story?
951.
Yeah, 951. So there's a lot of stuff there. Alternatively, we can say that 120 is time before the flood, might have been, but that's really not what that verse implies. It says, I will walk with man for 120 years. Why is God only walking with me 120 years? I'm only worthy for 120 years? Maybe Noah was only worthy for 120 years too, and he somehow outlived past that. I don't know. That's a good point, because later, Noah does have some issues. So,
yeah.
However, he was already pretty old, so he probably had some issues first. Remember, every living thing on the planet was seen as unclean. Was Noah in space?
No kidding. And then he curses his son after the flood. Curses his son for being naked in his own tent. Great job, Noah.
Well, yeah, there's so much with that. We have a great time doing these and eating babies. Not really.
Yeah.
They're so defensive about that. Like I said, there's a lot of weird things. I would love to see a wooden actual ark built on these plans. Not a replica, a full-size wooden
And I'd like
ark
to see 3,000 different species try to fit on this thing.
Yeah, I'd like to just see 3,000 animals try to fit in, too.
And they have to be different kinds by the Christian definition of kind.
Yeah, and no hiding behind microevolution either, going, well, one lizard becomes 20 lizards. No, that's actually a form of evolution. That's what Darwin says. If you want to hide behind that, this starts to make even less sense. Because then why doesn't macroevolution happen?
Mm-hmm. Yes. It was just, my opinion, it was just written by a bunch of people who were trying to figure things out. And they found a lot of old text and just extrapolated from there.
A lot of this stuff, actually, in my opinion, simply put, it's a pissing match between religions. My God is better than yours.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's other stories that actually, other versions of the Noah's Ark story, various different versions.
The story of Gilgamesh floods the planet.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done a lot of the other research in there. I've heard there's a few stories, though, like South America's supposed to have one. Who else would have a Noah's Ark story?
From what I've heard, the most likely story is there's this one place where it was a local flood, and my opinion on what actually happened is that the guy that Noah was actually based off of was a guy who was on some sort of barge, had some animals, like some some
Sheep.
maybe some cattle, whatever, and there was a local flood, and it just turned into Noah's Ark from there. People started exaggerating the story, like happens in real life.
Yeah, play a game of telephone with somebody one time. And just start with a simple sentence, Aunt Sally's dog peanut butter.
Yeah.
And see where it ends. Play with like 30 or 40 people though, because that represents, generations and generations. And that's still actually not enough people to retell the story.
Not to mention, let's see here. You've heard of the common phrase of, the story gets something gets bigger every time.
Something does get bigger every time. God endowed Japheth. Just remember?
Yes. Because they'll ask for it.
So yeah, in all seriousness, Noah's Ark, beginning to end, pretty much God shows up, there's a giant bullshit alarm somewhere, says, hey God, shit's happening. God investigates. I don't know why God has to investigate. Remember, he's all-knowing, but God investigates. He goes through the 5 stages of grief, repetitively throughout the story. You can pick out whatever you'd like to fit there. I picked out what made sense here, Genesis 6:3, Genesis 6:7, Genesis 8:20 through 22. And, and that's the 5 stages are denial and isolation, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. That should be about all.
Not to mention, it just defies the laws of science and logic and physics. The entire thing just defies all laws of physics. There's nothing to say that. Why did God make him build this ark when he said, hey, I'm going to take all this stuff up to heaven with me for a little while, and then put it back down?
Yeah.
It would have been so much simpler.
Just remember, all those satellites you see up there going overhead are nothing but folks on that upper layer of ice. Have a good day.
Thank you.